Want to welcome y'all to this Mass Comm Week event, panelist presentation, featuring lots of different people from Rooster Teeth. Very honored to have y'all here. We got Cole Gallian, who is a Texas State alum. Actually.
I took this class.
Yep. We got Blaine Gibson. We've got Chris Demarais and Mariel Salcedo. So thank you so much for coming today. Sorry, Demarais, I messed that one up. But,
no, you're fine. There's no correct way to pronounce it. Everyone just muddles their way through it, and then it's like, cool.
Eventually, it's just, oh, that's Chris. It's just Chris.
Yeah,
yeah.
We do the best we can. Hey, my last name is Zmikly, so it's not easy. But I do want to thank y'all for coming so much. We have a lot to talk about, but before we get going with everything, I thought it'd be great to just kind of go around and hear each of your stories, kind of how you really got started with Rooster Teeth, really from probably your, college days and, where you are now. Maybe everything from what you did in college that helped prepare you, and then kind of your way to Rooster Teeth. And we can just kind of go through and hear each of your stories. So, Chris, if you don't mind, would you mind going first?
Sure. I came to school to Austin and was in school from 2005 to 2009. And I was, really involved in just like school activities, film. I was a film major. And after graduating, I did a bunch of film competitions and film festival type things. And the owners of the company, or the then owners of the company, Matt and Bernie from Rooster Teeth, they were the judges, and the movies that I had submitted won the festivals. And then they contacted me and a couple of my friends about doing contract work with them. So I did contract work for about 8 months or so, and then got offered full time. This was back in like 2010 or so, and a much smaller company then. Probably I think I was like the 12th employee or something. And from there, started doing pretty much everything: writing, directing, editing. Just making stuff happen, especially with a company that small. When you're starting out, you really kind of just gotta find what opportunities there are for you to show value, and then just do whatever you can to exceed those expectations. Right now I write, direct, produce. I've written on a bunch of different shows, movies. Most recently with COVID, everything, been working really hard on a bunch of podcasts and streaming and pretty much everything, much like everyone at Rooster Teeth.
That's great, Chris. Thank you. Mariel, would you mind going next?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Mariel Salcedo. I went to UT and originally actually wanted to be I was like a pre-med bio major, but I knew that I wanted to work in film. I just didn't think I could actually make a full career out of it. I worked at UT, or I went to UT. While I was there, I did TSTV. I worked for KLRU, the PBS station here in Austin, and then I had an internship in LA. I worked at Sony, and then came back. Had my final semester internship at Rooster Teeth, and was very lucky that I got offered a full-time position pretty much right after my internship ended. I started off doing kind of more behind the scenes associate producing work, working on podcasts, editing, that kind of thing, and then kind of worked my way up to a producer role. So I worked on a few different shows, and then moved into more of a talent / producer role, which I did for a few years. And then as of late, I work for the sales department at Rooster Teeth. I'm a campaign manager now. So basically what I do is essentially, let's say a brand comes in and says, hey, we really love what you guys do. We want to work with you guys. Here's a set amount of money that we're thinking, what kind of creative concepts can you come up with so we can have a partnership. So then I'm kind of the middleman between any clients we have and our creative teams to try and get the ball rolling on that kind of stuff. So I've been at Rooster Teeth now. Will be my 6th year, so it's been a while, but it's been great.
That's awesome. I have a lot I want to talk about just in terms of, online business models and, sponsorships and all that kind of stuff. It sounds like obviously you're very successful with all that. I thought you were going to start with, it's me.
Oh, it is me. It hasn't been me in a while, though.
And then we got Cole Gallian, who's a Texas State alum.
Yeah, I went to school at Texas State University. Graduated 2014, December 2014, and I got my start at Rooster Teeth by actually networking through some of the convention scenes here in town, and eventually that led to getting an internship, which kind of, as Chris and Mariel said, like the internship at the time kind of covered everything. But what I found kind of my niche was technical directing for the podcasts, that's actually, I learned a lot from like some of the classes I'd taken here at Texas State that let me go into that, which after a year or two there, I kind of started thinking, hey, like I've always been in love with animation. I want to really get involved in animation. How can I do that? And I kind of started to realize that technical directing is kind of like live action, like live editing. And so you develop a lot of skills when technical directing that you can use, especially directing a podcast where you're constantly switching to look at where you're kind of directing the audience's attention to what you want them to see, and timing. And a lot of that is applicable to editing, especially for animation. And so sought to transfer to the animation department, and I've been there for another 5 years now. So it's been a crazy ride, yeah.
That's great. And he also owns an alpaca, and he's a human Muppet.
I confirmed. Both the above.
That's awesome. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about in terms of, your time at Texas State and all that kind of stuff. And then we got Blaine Gibson also. Hi, Blaine.
Hello. Really quick, Chris was like a mentor of mine. Mariel was like one of my college friends from UT. Cole had a huge reputation at Rooster Teeth when he was an intern as having one of the best work ethics. I just want to point that out. Like, we are like, this kid from Texas State just kills it at everything he does. So huge shout out to Cole. And yeah, after that, like, I think Rooster Teeth mostly focused on folks from UT and the radio television film program. But after Cole came in and just like destroyed it with his internship or all the PA work he was doing, we started opening up to a lot of Texas State people and other people from other schools because Cole was killing it. Yeah, sorry, weird shout out.
I will say though, before you get into that, don't hype him up too much because he did entirely delete a drive.
I did do that. I did delete the entirety of the broadcast computer, but we won't get into that either.
Sweet. I'm Blaine. I used to be a community member of Rooster Teeth years ago, and I went to community college in North Dallas, a place called Collin County Community College. Alliteration. And I wanted to go to UT because Rooster Teeth I listened to their podcast and they'd always talk about how great Austin was. So I came in, and then kind of like Mariel was saying, I worked for TSTV, which is our student-run television program. And like Cole, I also volunteered at the convention, RTX. And I just happened to get one of the lead talents as like a person that I was going to be a PA for during the convention weekend. Got to know Barbara really well, even though I was just getting her coffee and Egg McMuffins. She was really cool. And when they opened up the internship applications shortly after RTX, I asked if she could give me a good word, and she did. So then I had my internship at Rooster Teeth, and then I was still in college when I was interning with them, but they put me on part-time until I graduated. And then literally the day I graduated, like cap and gown in hands and wearing it and stuff like that, I went to work that day. I was so excited to start. We were doing a 24-hour live stream when that happened. But in terms of what I do, I'm a writer-director for live action primarily. I do a little bit of talent stuff here and there. Chris and I co-run a podcast together. We do a lot of gaming content now that COVID's kind of a thing that we can't really like shoot shorts and stuff like we used to. Yeah, that's me.
And you were in a Bare Naked Ladies music video, is that right?
Yeah, I think Chris co-direct that too. I think all of us were at some point. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, was that? I know Bernie's friends with the Bare Naked Ladies guys, so.
Yeah, they're super cool guys. They came into town one time to do a show, and they gave a Rooster Teeth staff like backstage passes, and
That's awesome.
it's really neat.
That's cool. So we're going to get into some questions that I have, but I do want to open it up, obviously, for student questions later. So if y'all have any questions that are watching, please use the chat to ask those questions. I'm going to just start with, when I think about Rooster Teeth's kind of progression, really, I mean, Red versus Blue obviously comes to mind as the first kind of big video game production show. And like back when webisodes weren't really even that popular, it was like one of the first main webisodes that I remember. And it's just grown into a huge, I mean, it's a production house, where you do films and episodes and series and live videos and talk shows and everything. I mean, it's really fragmented into all these different, types of products. And so it's really on par with any of the like streaming services that we have today. And I think it's just become its own platform, obviously, in many ways. And so I guess when thinking about the different types of content you come out with, how do you, if you have an idea for a new show or a new, testing shows, what is the process for how you come up with from conception to like the final product? How do you come up? I mean, it seems like you have a 1,000 different products. Is it kind of like throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks, and let it keep going if it's got a traction, or is there research involved with it? I guess how do you kind of go through that process?
I feel like Chris and I can kind of speak on the live action series front, and then Mariel and Cole could talk about animation and podcasts and broadcast productions. But for me and Chris, you can speak up too. Typically, like right now with COVID production, if we have an idea, we just try it out. There is no kind of like green light stage. We've kind of had to switch gears into a more maneuverable like production chain because we're not going on sets like we used to. But if we ever do shorts or like a series or anything that's like a higher production value, then we do typically have like a green light stage, and all that kind of goes through a creative pipeline where we, have like a room where we, pitch ideas and, kind of bounce ideas off of each other. I don't know, Chris, what do you?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's a couple of different factors for me, at least. One, what am I excited to do? What types of stories do I want to tell, or what types of projects do I want to work on? And then I also make a point to look at the environment that I am in, that the company is in, and that the world is in, and try and make content that's going to make sense with those, taking those things into consideration. So there's been times at Rooster Teeth where it was difficult to get the funding for certain types of scripted shows, but then I would be like, okay, well, we have a broadcast setup where we do live shows, but there's a way to do a semi-scripted live show using the broadcast setup. Or, right now it's hard to, there's opportunity to do podcasts because I think that's a really good way. We haven't been really doing a lot of narrative, semi-scripted podcasts. So that, it's kind of like looking what's available, what the, what's at my disposal, and then what am I excited about, what stories or projects, and then just jumping in and trying stuff. There's, to me, there's two very much things of like putting together a good pitch deck where you're like, hey, here's the show, here's the concept, here's the breakdown of the episodes and what a budget might be, and like here's why it makes sense to do it, kind of sell the show. Making a good pitch deck is super important, but also if you're able to, just making a proof of concept and then showing that is almost always way more effective, because then someone could be like, oh, I get that, that's good, or oh yeah, that works. You don't have to like so, but then that's not always possible if you're, depending upon what you're pitching. But those two, knowing how to make a good pitch deck, or also just being able to like, hey, get together and make a proof of concept.
Kind of going off of that, Chris kind of mentioned like working within the confines and kind of like working with what's at your disposal. And I mean, just as an example, like at Rooster Teeth, we kind of work at a big studio. It's on a weird lot. It used to be the old Armory. And when that Area 51 meme thing was going down, where like, you know, people were talking about raiding Area 51, we were thinking, well, like, what's a piece of content we can make from that? And we looked at our art department. We had a bunch of camouflage outfits and like guns and all sorts of things like that. And then we had like these big studio spaces that kind of looked like airplane hangars, like a military base, and we made a short out of it. So like that's been something that's always guided me, is just kind of like, what's at my disposal? What can I make from all this stuff? And then just kind of going from there.
And then what's that like for you, for Mariel? I know your job lately is connecting those, you know, fans and you know, followers to the kind of sponsorships and things like that. I mean, what is your kind of side of it, and how do you decide who to kind of pitch to and how to connect content in that way?
Yeah, well, we had like the biggest, like most successful partnership that we've had right now is Voodoo Ranger, and they're a beer brand, and they love us. We love them. We've done a bunch of different videos with them. And so we have this podcast called Face Jam that's just Michael Jones and Jordan Swears going around and eating things, right? And like rating them and whatnot. And so one of them, Eric Bador, their producer, had this idea that he was just like, I just want a van. Like, I want the guys to be able to get into a van, drive it around, hand out food to people. And obviously in a pandemic world, that was really hard to do. But, you know, we pitched the idea to Voodoo Ranger, and they loved it. And they were like, whatever you guys need, like, you know. And so now these guys, we were able to do it so that they not only got their van and got to, you know, go around in it for a little bit, but they also, we tagged on like 4 video podcasts. So the show is usually just an audio show, but with this sponsorship, we were able to do, you know, 4 actual video podcasts that people can watch, and people have really been responding well to them. So now we're trying to see where we can go from there, and having like, I think DoorDash originally sponsored that show to be made. And so we're kind of we look at those partnerships and like what kind of, you know, like dream ideas that we have that we'd love to get made, but we don't necessarily have the funding to do it. And then, you know, we'll have a partner come in who is like, hey, I'm either kind of looking for this kind of specific thing, or I'm looking for this kind of activation. And right now we're kind of in the process of like smoothing that all out, so that like, you know, I know that the Achievement Hunter team wants to do this, like this great project, and they just like haven't found the right partner for it. Then like, if we have a client that comes in, you know, we can kind of match the two and make sure it's a good fit and whatnot. But yeah, so we've been really lucky that we've had a lot of really great partners that are super enthusiastic about what we do, even though at first they may not get it. It might take them a little bit. But yeah, so yeah, it's been really good.
That's great. And what works in your favor, it seems like, is just kind of the low barrier of entry to try something. I mean, you really don't need much more than sometimes a smartphone to see if an episode might work, or of course a pitch deck to, you know, test and play it out. But like, you know, I think what works for y'all is you do have a wide range of quality, from like high-end, high-produced films like Laser Team to like the first-person smartphone walking around the office and dipping each other into ice buckets, you know, or doing Fruit Ninja outside or whatever it is. It's kind of like you have the both and, that you don't need to really test much. Just try it out, throw it out there, and see if it fits and if it builds an audience. So we've been talking about that in our class lately. It's just the like increasingly fragmented like options that are available today that didn't quite exist maybe 10 years ago.
It's crazy how many shows exist here that started as a proof of concept rather than going through maybe like a traditional pitch process. Like, I mean, that proof of concept winds up in the pitch process, but normally it's like, oh yeah, that first episode, that pitch you did, let's make that the first episode.
Yeah.
So just,
a lot of your work is, Cole, is as podcasting too. And so that kind of, you know, it's interesting to kind of see that, you know, probably if somebody has an idea for a podcast, it's try it out. Let's see how it goes and post it.
You can kind of just go, especially now, everyone's kind of updating their knowledge and technology around streaming, which kind of goes hand in hand with that. I mean, you have all of the tool. If you're in this call right now, you have all the tools you need to do essentially what we're doing. We might have like more people backing us up, like a broadcast department who can do the technical directing and stuff, but you can edit that. So
Paul's throwing down the gauntlet. He's asking someone to usurp us. Take the challenge. Do it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
As far as new content or new IPs through the animation department, it's a little lengthier process just because the animation does take a lot longer to get from start to final product. We've kind of developed two pipelines as to how we're going to make a new animated show. We have a studio pipeline, which is more so right now. I think we've already announced it, that we're working with like companies like Webtoons, which is a big online make your own comic and publish it through this. And those eventually get big enough to where they get made into animated shows. So there's been a couple that have been made in Japan. There's a bunch that are talking with us about how can we make a pitch to present to people like HBO or Adult Swim or Netflix. And but then as to like the people at the company who want to pitch something, we have what we call our studio department. And with our studio department, like once or twice a year, we'll have a pitch fest where people can come and bring their pitch decks, and everyone, you'll see people getting together. Writers will team up with the art department, and they'll team up with the modeling department and create little examples of what they want to see. I think last year we had our first animation festival, or our Anim Jam, where a bunch of the people who had free cycles, they were just like, hey, you have a week to make an episode of something. Like your show, we're going to give you a director, people who have never been directors before. You're going to get a chance. You're going to get to work with people you've never worked with before. Regular artists, you're going to get a chance to art direct for it, and just give everyone a chance to kind of step up those skills. And we've actually seen a few shows come through there and kind of are moving through the pipeline. I think we were saying what recorded by Arzal, a show that we just had air recently. That was one of those shows where our animation director for a bunch of our 2D department shows, she pitched her show, started the process, got it. We had a full 4 episodes of that come out earlier this year, 4 or 5 episodes of that come out earlier this year.
That's awesome. I mean, one thing I love about your team and what, Rooster Teeth brings is it was hard. I guess it sounded hard for y'all to give me your titles because you do so much where you're like writing and directing and acting and, and now, just doing things like sponsorships, and you're editing the podcast as much as you're posting the podcast. And, it just seems like you have the technical skills along with the on-screen skills. And I feel like that's something that y'all kind of can see both sides of this. Like you're able to see if something would work conceptually, but then like you're also the people that are editing it sometimes and posting it. What is that like as you're kind of coming up with this stuff? Is it, does it make it easier, I guess?
Well, for me, knowing how to do different parts of the production process, one, it enables you to better communicate what you want when you aren't doing everything, because you know how to set up lights, you know how to edit. It enables easier communication and easier for you to know what you want. And then in terms of like, presenting an idea, you can better execute like a low budget proof of concept, because you can put it together in your head and rather than having to go out and like hire people or get other departmental resources saying, hey, I can't do this, can you edit this for me? Or, oh, hey, can you're only limited by your own I guess limitations. That's not a very good quote. But yeah, I mean, being able to take things in your own hands. That being said, it is very important, I think, also to really find things that you want to specialize in and focus in, because that's a lot of times how the industry works. Like you want to be a Swiss Army knife, but you also still want to be able to be really good at 1 or 2 things, so that those are things you can focus in.
Yeah, it just seems like there's a culture of learning and honing skills and learning new skills, and kind of while you're there at Rooster Teeth, it seems like it's just kind of if you want to do something, you can learn from the people that are next to you and just get into something that you maybe had not thought of before.
But I would also say like being able to dip your toe into multiple things. Like I used to edit a lot more than I do now, but I'll edit every now and then. But like, editing, writing, directing, acting, being able to know all of those different things, like it really helps. Like Chris said, communicating, but also like if I'm directing something, but I'm also thinking in an editor's mindset, I'll know, well, I don't need this coverage. I can lose this because I'm not going to use this in the edit. And like understanding from an actor's perspective, having been on camera, in my director's mindset, I know how to better communicate with actors. So it's like, I think it's important that you experience all those different, realms of filmmaking so that you can, have a better grasp on the medium.
I think Mariel may also be able to join me in saying that it also kind of helps. This kind of setup helps you find what you actually want to do more. Because like I didn't necessarily know I wanted to be an animation editor when I left school. I had never had a chance to really do it. Never had and just being that adjacent to it and having the ability to walk over, just kind of be like, hey, what's this like? How? And realizing it's not that different than stuff I was already doing, helped me make that step into a job that I like more now.
Oh yeah, it's been the same for me. I mean, I started off at Rooster Teeth working for the broadcast department, and then I moved into more of like a direct content creation role, and now I'm in sales. So I joke that like my goal is to work for every department up until HR, and they'll just like fire everyone, I guess. But but yeah, no, it's been great because in every kind of different position that I've had, I've picked up and learned different skills and really found out what I do like. And like I got to be creative for the majority of my time here, but it was in doing the creative stuff and then doing what like other people would consider the boring stuff, like the producing, the logistics, the planning. That's kind of where I felt myself be more like I was just happier there, and it was stuff that I really enjoyed and like felt very challenged on, just because I was like, there's people here that they're like creative intuition is a lot better than mine and works a lot better for them, and it's almost like like I kind of what Chris was saying, like being a jack of all trades and like the Swiss Army knife is really great, but if you have the people who are really, really great at and they can concentrate and you can do like your own thing and be really, really great at that, then I think it works really well. But yeah, so like as of late, like I kind of hit this point where I was like, okay, well, I feel like I want to learn more about business development and how the actual business works. And so, yeah, I was lucky that I got the opportunity to do that.
It seems like the type of job that you probably never get bored in and can like move laterally and upward and kind of be happy. I think a lot of people leave their jobs because they're just, bored, or they're just like, they've been there, done that. And this definitely doesn't seem like the type of environment that would happen in.
Yeah. Well, I will say one thing you always have to be like, I think it's the case. I mean, I've worked at Rooster Teeth for a very long time, is you do have to, look, you can't always make everything exactly how you want to make. There might be a show you really, really want to get made and it just doesn't work out, or it's not funding for it. But that's why you need to be working on 3 or 4 different projects and be willing to pivot. And like I was saying earlier, like look at the environment and say, okay, this is the type of content that's working well right now, or I think could do well, or there's an opportunity to make. So it's like really like, and sometimes you got to do, it's a job. So sometimes you got to work on a production that maybe it's not your favorite, but again, it's a job. You can't do everything exactly how you want it. You got to do one for the team.
It's still a job. Yeah, that's a great perspective. We've got a lot of student questions that I definitely want to get to, but I have just one more that I'd like to get in there before we get to student questions. Is I want to talk a little bit about just the business model. We talk in the media industry a lot about the traditional legacy companies that really just focused on ad subscriptions and like advertising, and that was kind of like the pillars of making a newspaper was whatever. Same with broadcast. It's just like ad dollars, but it seems like today's revenue models are much different. They're much more diverse. We look at the Texas Tribune that's in Austin as well. A lot of their money is made through events and, sponsorships and advertising and subscriptions. And that's kind of y'all's model too, is that you've got the subscription model, you've got, you know, merchandise that you sell, you have live event, RTX, you do sponsorships and ads, and making money off YouTube and your movies. I mean, there's so many different ways to make money, and that is kind of the world today, is that you can't rely on just ads. You know, you can't rely on just, and you have to be creative with it, as Mariel was saying too. And like, it just seems like that is the new model for, you know, digital media in general. Can y'all talk a little bit about that, and just kind of what that environment is like? And is that true? Do you see that play out, like, you know, at Rooster
Yeah.
Teeth?
Well, I do think I look back at certain other brands and companies. I remember you mentioned having Bernie come on at a previous time. I think one thing Bernie was really good at, and was making sure that there's always a home for Rooster Teeth that wasn't reliant upon a platform. Where, like, at one point they talked about making getting rid of roosterteeth.com and just making it a MySpace page.
Wow.
because that's what shows were doing back then.
Mhm.
At that time. But, you know, it's like, well, kept roosterteeth.com, you can distribute on other platforms, but still kind of having your own home base, building your own brand. Same thing with like YouTube. There's so many content creators who lived and died by YouTube. 90% of their revenue came from ad revenue from YouTube. And then there was the apocalypse, which was a period where all of a sudden advertisers pulled 90% of funding from their advertising from YouTube, and all of a sudden all these people lost 90% of the revenue. And so just finding ways to just diversify how you bring in, how you make content and how you bring in money from it. Like, just be looking around, be looking for opportunities to, and we do that even within Rooster Teeth on like, hey, how can we make this show more profitable? So that we can keep making it, you know, like, oh, what, you know, do we need to push merch? Do we need to do other types of programming, or what, you know, what's our way to diversify?
Yeah. Even, I think we've talked about in the company, we've talked before about how having like those pillars. So essentially, if one thing falls out, like Chris said, the apocalypse, certainly us not getting that YouTube ad money hurt us a little bit, but not nearly as much as somebody whose entire business model is based off of YouTube ads revenue. Then another thing that we would kind of find ourselves doing a lot is maybe working with other companies in partnerships. That's now also, I mean, we were kind of saying easy, able to communicate and get sponsor deals, partnership deals made.
Yeah. Putting all of your eggs in one basket's not the best, and I think that's why Rooster Teeth has continued to succeed, is because when one thing kind of falls out, then the other income revenue sources kind of elevate the you know, help out with those losses. And like with Rooster Teeth, it's pretty awesome too, because we've really explored a total variety of ways to make money. Like, we've tried feature films, you know, we're doing like our, you know, like our normal stuff, ad reads and things like that. We even got into like, and we're still are doing gaming, not just video games. Video games didn't work out well for us. But we did like card games. I think there's a Ruby game going on. They made a card game out of a show that I used to make like ages ago. So it makes things fun and interesting. So it's,
yeah. And not all of them succeed. You have to be able to be like, okay, that didn't really work. Let's pull back from that
And learn from it.
But
Going on?
I was gonna jump off of something that Cole said about partnerships. There's a lot to be gained from either like financial partnerships where you partner with brands or other content creators to make shows together, and also even just collaborating and sharing, having guests on your show and you be on their show to kind of cross-pollinate brands to grow your shows.
And then Mariel, do you have any comments on today's diverse revenue world?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I feel like, you know, Matt and Bernie definitely built into this company and always talked about the importance of like having your own website as well. And that's always where we're constantly trying to push people. Like it's almost like we leave breadcrumbs all over the internet, hoping people will come back to roosterteeth.com. And that's kind of where we want our focus to be, because no matter what, like that's always going to be our home. And so that's always kind of where the focus has been, is like, if we can kind of, do top of funnel stuff that will reach people far and wide, but then eventually get them to the site and get them to subscribe. Like that's like the honeypot. That's what we want people to eventually gravitate towards. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's like what the guys are saying with that apocalypse, and then, even with sites like Patreon and OnlyFans and stuff like that like people are using in really creative ways. There's always there's always that kind of thing in the back of your mind that like, if you, like that might go away. So like that was always the importance that like Bernie and Matt put on our own website, and like making sure that we were always constantly like guiding people there. And I think we've done a really good job. I think there's like, we just recently released a bunch of living room apps. So like now if you have a Roku, if you have like Apple TV or Prime or whatever, like you can find our app and you can watch all of our content on there if you have a subscription. And so we're just trying to find ways to constantly be like relevant in the times that are changing, as well as, but also still consistently focusing on like our brand and like our home and making it what it is.
Yeah, that's pretty consistent with what I had some people from Business Insider and New York Times on my Monday class talk about. That same thing is the on-platform, off-platform strategy, where you have your like you can only do so much on your website, but then you have to go outside of there, like to places like TikTok or wherever, to find people too. So it's a both and. You kind of have to have your feet in both worlds, but also beware that the apocalypse may come, and that's interesting. I want to get to some student questions. So if you have any questions, use the chat, please. I'll get to them as well. But one question was, what is Rooster Teeth's current relationship with Warner Media like, and how did the company change after the acquisition? If you can answer that.
I mean, they're definitely our parent company. And with that, we've kind of had a lot more structure and kind of like guidance in what kind of content they want us to make. For instance, we were dabbling in feature films, and I think that Warner Media has enough people making feature films, so they kind of were like, why don't you guys focus on the things that you're like really good at? So like, get us like Ruby, give us podcasts, that sort of stuff, which to some people that might feel like it's limiting our creative, but I mean, personally, I think especially like right now with COVID going on, having a parent company, it makes me feel really secure. With everything happening and people losing their jobs and stuff like that, I don't believe Rooster Teeth has had to let go of anybody through this whole thing. We're really fortunate because we've had their financial backing. Not due to, it's a mix. What's up?
Nothing due to COVID reasons. Nothing
yeah.
Due to, like, let's get back from COVID.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, it's a mixed bag. I think having a parent company, you definitely have like someone that's, watching your numbers and stuff like that. But then you also have someone that's watching your back. So
I know even kind of early on during the quarantine times, Warner was actually pretty impressed with how we were still able to see barely any drop off in our online website views. And they were really impressed by how our broadcast team was doing stuff. And they actually, I think they even reached out for advice and be like, hey, how are you doing this for a lot of the work from home setups? For example, like John Oliver, he was doing Last Week Tonight, and he had to start doing it from his home. And it's like, well, they're used to having an entire studio to film that show. Who can we talk to for consultation on how to work from home? And I think we had some of our people talking with the HBO people, figuring out what's the best setups and what can we do to make this as painless as possible.
I would also say, I mean, Mariel could talk a lot more about this, but having a relationship with a big parent company gives a lot of opportunities to work with other brands and like it's in Warner Media's best interest to use one of their own companies to help promote one of their other shows. And so like Mariel works with a lot of partnerships to help get funding for stuff that we want to make, but also help advertise Warner Media content.
Yeah, for sure. Like Warner Media has this like internal kind of, I don't know if you'd call it like a brand agency or what you'd call it, but it's called Fusion. And essentially their business goals are to help align all of Warner Media properties to help essentially like promote each other. And so we do a lot of work with Fusion where it's like, like the Witches movie that just came out on HBO Max. Like they came to us and said, hey, like, the audience that you guys have is exactly what we're looking for. Like, what kind of things can you do to activate on this to make it interesting? And so we were like, well, we can use our influencer talent. We can use like outside guests that we have. We can do like a watch party. We can make maybe like in the Witches in the movie, they have this like potion that they give to kids. And so we're like, okay, well, we can make like a drink recipe for that. So like encouraging people to like, have an interactive experience with us. And I think like, all of us have really been at the company, I think, since before it was bought out initially. Like, I think Cole and I were kind of right at the start of like, right when I started, we were still just Rooster Teeth. And then, then it became Full Screen, and then it became Otter, and then it became all these other things. So we've definitely gone through a lot of changes, but I think so far in what I've seen in the work that I've been doing, it's been a huge plus to have that kind of bigger parent company. There's a lot of perks to it. We get, we get like AT&T deals, and that's another thing too. Like kind of what Chris was saying, like they're more inclined to work with us because it'll make our like inner communication and like inner kind of property look really good. But then it also like we offer them discounts that they may not get from other like smaller production companies to like execute on things. And we also have the Roost. And so the Roost is a huge podcast network that we launched a few years ago that has podcasts, that has a few Rooster Teeth podcasts, but then branches out. And so, Warner can then advertise on those that necessarily aren't Rooster Teeth owned, but they're Rooster Teeth produced, or, rerun the ads for these different podcasts. So it's been I think it's been a really great partnership. And I like Blaine was saying, there are things that come in like structure and all sorts of different things, but like, the company's just kind of like, we've had bumpy roads and stuff, but like we've never had Warner kind of look down and be like, hey, like get your shit together, like, and so it's been great that they've been a good parent, I think.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, they wanted us for what we did really well, and they didn't really want to mess that up. They're like, hey, you have a really good thing going on. What if we helped elevate that and also shared a cut?
Yeah. And I'll also say that ever since we got acquired by Warner, I haven't had to do all-nighters like I used to when we were a smaller company.
Yeah.
Like when we were a startup, I remember like being at the office for a week straight working on a Christmas video, crying on a beanbag because I wanted to go home. And then what Mariel was saying with like the Roost, we have networking opportunities, but we also have the opportunity to work on other IP that's owned by Warner. So like there's a dude, Tony, who works in our store, designing merchandise and stuff like that. He loves Batman. He loves Transformers. And then he like pitched, can we make Batman and Transformers stuff? And then Warner was like, yeah, go nuts. We own the property. Like, that's cool. So we've gotten to make that kind of awesome stuff. And I think eventually we're going to come to the point where we're going to be able to make content that's, other IP. I think we worked on Transformers. So like, we're already there kind of.
Yeah, that's always the scary part about getting bought out is, how will it change the culture of the company? And, we see that all the time in media organizations. And I'm glad to hear that it's everything has its pros and cons, but overall sounds like a good thing. Y'all have mentioned, how you've kind of transitioned during COVID. And one of the student questions was, how you mentioned a little bit how it's changed the way you work today. You're all working from home. Some of you from the Four Seasons Landscaping. But is it affecting internships or soon-to-be grads in general? Do you think it's something that you're just kind of holding on and waiting to the end? Students want to know, is it negatively affecting? I mean, it's kind of negatively affecting the world right now, but
yeah. As far as in the animation department, as far as new graduates go, it hasn't affected our process, except I would say now more than ever, the most important thing is your reel when looking there and having the absolute best stuff possible on the reel, because that's going to be the only way we can parse through to get to the interview stage?
Yeah.
I guess I would say there's maybe some limitations, but there's also a lot of big advantages because so many internships are for the first time work from home or online. And so you do have opportunity to apply for internships in basically anywhere and have a much better shot at getting it. Because a lot of the times it's a lot higher to hire an intern if they're, in Alaska. But with the way it is now, it's like everyone's doing so much from home. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's just like be aggressive and look and see what's out there and see if you can do it from home, because there are some opportunities you could do from San Marcos or Austin that could get you a job in New York or LA or anywhere without having to leave the what is it in San Marcos, the square.
Yeah.
Without having to
Now kind of more than ever opportunities are bigger, because I know for a long time Rooster Teeth could only feasibly do Austin or local internships. We weren't able to get somebody from far away. So yeah, that's a good point, Chris. Like almost anyone can apply for an internship here now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also changed the work that an intern will do. Like there's not going to be as much on-set PA work in the internship. It might be more data management, media, like getting media ready for editors. So it's changed kind of what we're looking for in interns.
Yeah. And it's definitely like not all changes for the better. Like it seems like we're trying to like paint a prettier picture than what's really happening. It sucks. Like having that FaceTime, that's what got me my job, like being able to communicate with my manager and be like there present with them. But to my knowledge, we haven't decreased the number of interns that we're doing. And I think that like your work speaks for itself. So as long as you're putting in the time and doing a good job, like you stand just as good of a chance as you did before to get like an awesome recommendation or potentially a future job down the road. But yeah, I mean, like, I feel so bad for you guys. Like college right now, like it's not the same, and that sucks. But hopefully things are going to go back to normal next year.
It seems like there's just a lot of different, opportunities for students today. And I was just talking to a student about a half hour before this about, a media job is not a broadcast job or a, newspaper writer job. I mean, there's so many, it's so fragmented today. And so it sounds like, especially even in, at Rooster Teeth or wherever you're at, being able to be that Swiss Army knife can give you the opportunity to kind of do a lot of different things, but do you recommend being, I know you mentioned it earlier, but do you recommend being the Swiss Army knife or the specialist?
I think Swiss Army knife. I mean, if you can do something like well, like, I mean, having someone that's a multifaceted tool, like that's invaluable, as opposed to like someone that I'm just like, hey, can you do this edit? And then I can't rely on them for like, data management or, being on set to PA or anything like that. Like I was a Swiss Army knife, and I think that worked out great for me because I was able to fit into whatever role they threw me in.
Yeah. I think, especially when you're an intern or starting out, being able to help in whatever way you can and show value, that is, I mean, there's so many interns from Rooster Teeth that have gotten hired because they were just there. They showed up and had a good attitude, and they would try whatever they could to do it. I mean, I remember when Cole was an intern and we were having a discussion about, Cole wants to be an intern for another semester. And I remember it was like, well, Cole's kicks ass. He always shows up. He always works hard. Yeah. Why wouldn't we want Cole for another semester? It's like, and in terms of like what to focus on. I mean, I also think if there is something that you want to do long-term, make an effort at the internship to reach out to the people who work with it. Hey, I'm really interested in this. What can I do to help you? Or, hey, obviously getting approval from whoever is managing you as an internship, but like just showing initiative. I saw a couple of questions about PR. I don't work in PR, but I think things that, I mean, so many, I would imagine PR jobs a lot of it's going to be a good probably foothold into that is working in social media, because so much of PR is how you present yourself outwardly, and so many companies that is making tweets, and that is making posts online, and so just things like that. But even then, our PR, a lot of it is writing press releases, making connections with press outlets, but like being able to like put together like good little videos or good little like a press release, making, that's graphic design, or little promos, that's video editing. So there's like, that's why the Swiss Army knife is helpful, in a lot of ways.
I will say, with the caveat, if you're interested going into animation, Swiss Army knife is great. Just don't be too unfocused. I know we'll get applications of somebody who's like, yeah, I'll be your audio guy. Oh, okay, never mind, I'll be your rigging artist. Oh, never mind, I'll be your artist. No, I'll be your editor. It's like, okay, well, it sounds like you just went through and hit check on every single department to apply for a job. Have a little more focus than that. Like if you can identify that this section is more in the pre-production, or this section more in the post-production, this section is more in the edit, and apply to those, like show your skill set, wide skill set in that, like being a marketing editor, being a animatic editor, being a live action editor, that kind of help you, instead of you're thrown in that you're also an audio engineer.
Yeah, we had someone who had applied for like one of our uploading positions and kind of like YouTube and content management, and in the entire application he just talked about how great he would be, like how great of an achievement hunter he would be. And it was just kind of like this is going in the trash, like if you're just trying to apply just to get your foot in the door to then like do something else. And I mean, that's like, like we have all kind of flowed in different ways in our positions, but like I think it's important what Cole was saying, like if you want to be a PR, like if you want to work in PR, like don't go and apply for our like editing position just to get your foot in the door, because our Sophie's gonna be like, okay, well, I don't want you because I want you to like, she's super into PR and she wants people to be super into PR too. And I think that goes for a lot of different things. Like it's been interesting too, because we've had like the show that I used to work on, Always Open, we have an email for it that we haven't used because we stopped making the show a while back, but people will email it and then just be like, hey, here's my resume, can you forward it on? It's like, absolutely not. Like there's an application process, and just because this email doesn't mean you're going to get like an extra foot in the door or anything. But yeah, and I think it's also important, like for internships, in terms of like my very first internship was a super small advertising and marketing agency in Austin, and it was like run by like two women, and I worked for them for a summer, and got to learn a lot of really great skills, got to do a lot of hands-on things. And so like I don't think I think people are like, they see these bigger companies and big names and they're like, oh, I want to just go for that, and they don't look at like like news stations or like smaller things that are like in the area that can help them a lot, because I had a lot of stuff on my resume that I think helped me get to Rooster Teeth. And so I think it's important to like, I mean, I don't think any kind of job experience can be bad. Like I worked as like a master control operator for PBS like in college, and I think that helped me too. And so I think if it's related to the field that you want to work in, like it can always be super helpful.
I would say, I know whenever, after I graduated, I made like 5 different versions of my resume for focusing on different types of jobs, because I had kind of that broader range of like Swiss Army knife experience, that I had worked on a bunch of different productions, but I could also tailor what my experience was to different types of jobs. So if like, oh, this is a more like post-production focused job or position, I had a post-production resume that was like really focusing on that. Then I had a production one, then I had like a more creative one. So it's like you really just kind of like don't go in there with here's my resume for everything. It's like you really want to tailor, when you're applying for jobs or internships, tailor what you have to that job.
And I'll
Yeah.
say that whenever I was interning for Rooster Teeth back then, the internship was a lot more broad. We basically had one intern for the entire company. And I think I was like, there's probably only like 30 some people back then. So it was easier for me to kind of like fill in several roles because that's kind of what they were looking for. But now we have a lot more specialized internships. But I do remember like communicating with my manager and saying like, I do all these things, but I want to focus specifically on directing, and like communicating what the thing is that you wanted to do was important. But also, like, while we're on the topic of internships, like, they're so important. I took an extra year of college just to get an internship. I have a business certification that I don't even need, but I needed more time to get an internship, and it still paid off, and I'm so glad I got it. So like, please get an internship, guys. It's so important.
And it teaches you what you thought you want to do, but you actually don't, you know. And I think one thing about this whole, like, you know, Swiss Army knife versus specialist is that, yeah, you may want to be a Swiss Army knife, but you also want to see passion out of people and to see that they really care about it and not just like learn skills to learn skills. But to me, that's the specialization really shows when you show your passion for something. And to me, that you can't fake that. And so that seems to be a big option. There was a student who messaged me, Valeria. She had a question. She wanted to voice it. So Valeria, if you're there.
Actually, I was just about to message you. I was just about to message you again because they basically answered what I had. I had the PR question because I am a PR major right now. I'm interning for a newspaper and it's relatively small. So I was going to ask about that, Mariel, because the internship that I'm doing right now is pretty small, but you know, I was gonna ask, when you're making a resume for the internships or just applying for a job in general, if if we should just make it a specialized thing on just, this is PR, this is what I've done with PR, or say like I have video editing experience or something like that. Like if it's better to just put that on the side, or as Chris just mentioned, you know, make several different resumes. But y'all basically answered that, so thank you.
Make several different resumes and several different cover letters.
Yeah.
I think a great resource that I used to use that I haven't used in a while, but there's this website called askamanager.com, and it's just this woman who's been a hiring manager for years for like all sorts of different companies, but she has really great tips on like on writing cover letters, on writing your resume, and she shows like examples of what not to do. It's not just this like listicle and stuff. So that's a great resource that I have always used. But yeah, I think like, you know, utilizing the skills section, it's funny because I like wanted to update my resume just because I was like, I haven't touched it in 6 years. Like, I wonder what resumes look like now. And I just like, I asked a few friends who, you know, recently got jobs, and I was like, oh, like, show me your resume. I want to see what they look like. And from my resume from like 2014 when I graduated college to what resumes look like now, it's just like completely different. And so, yeah, I think like, you know, definitely, like, you can have like your skills section will probably never change, right? Like on your resume, like if you're bilingual or if you know Photoshop, like all of that stuff should stay the same. I think it's like the wording and like what you focus on in the tasks and stuff that you've done in the past. I think that's kind of things that like adapts depending on like what you're focusing on.
That's all great advice. Thank you both. Thank you all. I want to get one last question in, and then I definitely want to plug your Extra Life stream this weekend at the very end, because we want as many people to participate as possible on that. But we'll just kind of end with this last one for Blaine and Chris. How did the idea for Good Morning from Hell podcast come to an actual production?
Well, I mean, that's one of those things that just gestated for a long time. We had a improv kind of like comedy show called On the Spot, which was similar to like Whose Line Is It Anyway type thing. That show had been going on for a long time, started kind of like to keep it fresh. It was being adapted to doing kind of like themed episodes and themed seasons. There was one that took place in hell, and me and Blaine were on a team for that, and we were like, oh, it'd be fun if we were if it was like he was Satan and I was like his intern, and then we're like, oh, it'd be funnier if it was Satan's little brother. So we kind of like created the characters on that and just had fun with it, didn't think too much of it. And then we brought him back for another episode of On the Spot. I'd been wanting to do a narrative podcast for a while and kind of been thinking like, what would be a good avenue to get that, just what would be a good concept. And I had an idea for a podcast that took place in hell a long time ago, but it was like I didn't really know what it was. Just the idea of like, oh, that's a fun like setting. And then so me and Blaine, I sat down with Blaine. It's like, hey, is there a way we can like merge all of these, and do make a narrative podcast using these existing characters? And that was one where we pretty much, I mean, it's a podcast, so it doesn't take much to produce. So we sat down and we recorded some test episodes and cut them together ourselves, put together a little pitch document, presented them. And yeah, Blaine, anything else?
No, you kind of hit it all on the head. No, it's a fun process. And I think Chris and I are both storytellers at heart. And we found a really cool way of practicing storytelling, but also not having to write it. And it's a lot more improvisational. And that show is super fun because we just come up with story beats and we try to make a beginning, middle, and end. And then we just bring on another person, another talent from outside of the company that's a friend or what have you. And we just kind of like improv a story. And it's a really fun exercise. And it's worked out pretty well. Cole's been on like twice, and Mariel's also been on.
I'm a huge fan of Comedy Bang Bang, so it's like a dream come true to get close. Just be like, oh, that improv narrative storytelling.
Yeah.
On Cole, thanks for talking to students too. I wanted to ask one more selfish question here. Just some advice for students, because you went through Texas State's program. You know what all the things are. What advice would you give to Texas State students today? What should they major in? What should they focus on?
Oh, that's a lot of pressure. I really enjoyed. Was the electronic media major? Mm-hmm. That gave me a lot of hands-on opportunity to go out and like get my hands on a camera, go out and film stuff. That forced partnership. I enjoyed the web development class, learning how to make your own website and keep up with that. Any of the stuff that was kind of, because I already knew I kind of wanted to move in this more online direction. As far as going forward, just always be on the lookout kind of for the smaller studios. You don't need to go after the biggest ones. That's where I got to learn a lot of stuff. Because my education was more news focused at the time when I was here. It was very much like, here's how you run a studio. And it's crazy how I never thought that technical directing, whenever I was like realized I wanted to work at Rooster Teeth, I never thought that technical directing would be my in. I never thought that what seemed as the very cut and dry, you just sit there and listen to the director, they're going to tell you what button to press. That would be. So just kind of look for opportunities and think of how you can take the skill set you have and how that can apply to something it's your dream job. And you're like, oh, this is what I want to do, but I don't have the skills to get there, but maybe you do. Like, maybe it's something that you didn't realize you could apply differently. So just kind of keep an open mind.
That's good. Yeah. Always learning, always adapting. All right. So I don't want to miss your extra live stream this weekend. Can you all talk about that and just how we can support it?
Yeah. This weekend, I think, we're on the RT site, roosterteeth.com.
Yeah. It's from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturday, November 14th.
And for anyone who doesn't know, Extra Life is an event put on by the Children's Miracle Network, I believe. And it essentially is just a donation system of helping kids in hospitals. You can kind of pick where you want your donations to go based on who you're donating to. I know ours is going to the Dell's Children's Hospital up here in Austin. And we work with them to make projects, like we've made like a garden for them. We've made like centers for the kids when they're waiting. Like, I think this one we're making places for people to kind of live here while they're going through stuff that they need to be at the hospital for. So especially like sometimes parents will need to travel long distance from Houston, from Dallas, from other areas. And it can be a little hard if they don't have a place to stay. So that's kind of the focus of our objective this year. And it's just like a 12-hour telethon almost. It's just us making goofy videos, making fun content. Donations are welcome, but also just showing up and hanging out and chatting and creating a good vibe for everyone is the most help that we could ask for, because the more people enjoy being there, the more likely that's someone's going to want to hang out and donate and join the cause. So
yeah. Traditionally, it's been a 24-hour live stream, but we've definitely had to switch because in-studio presence isn't as big of a thing this year. We're definitely trying to limit the number, but we're still going to be doing things in studio, and we're going to be doing a lot more streaming from home.
That 12 hours, all the in-studio stuff. We're doing stuff all week. All week we're promoting the stream, as well as I think even the 12 hours before the stream, our community is going to hop on and help us out. We're doing a bunch of from home stuff in that time leading up to the 12-hour main event.
And yeah, we've had a segment in the past. It was the 2 a.m. segment, and we called it Too Spooky. And it was me, Cole, Carrie, and Miles, and we did a bunch of dumb, scary things. But since we're not streaming at 2 a.m., we're streaming at 2 p.m., and we're going to be doing 2 p.m. Spooky. And I don't know if you guys know the game Phasmophobia, but Cole and Carrie are basically going to be playing Phasmophobia in real life, and it's going to be really fun. It's going to be really stupid.
One other thing, and just in terms of helping promote, showing up, watching it, but also like posting about it, sharing it with your friends, just kind of spreading the word would be great.
That's great. Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Vanessa, for getting it going with us, and it's great to meet y'all, and good to have you back, Cole. You're a stranger, and thank you all so much. We look forward to seeing you all online, and thanks for all you do.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. And good luck out there. Get an internship. You won't regret it.
That's awesome. Thank you again.